Hello, world. I'm Chris Pirillo, and you've tuned into the very first of what should be many weekly webinars hosted by me, Chris Pirillo, because that's who I am. I've been doing business for about 20 years as an entrepreneur and have decided that it's finally time I begin to answer questions and address certain situations and uncover solutions for fellow entrepreneurs and business owners. And I've never really done that before. I mean, I've done it kind of in the way that I've created content for free in the past, but the idea of this monthly service with a weekly webinar in that monthly service is specifically to address a part of the global community who has relied on my advice over the past 20 years. A lot of people might know me for the tech intelligence that I might share, not just regurgitating news headlines, but actually giving some amount of perspective and understanding to how tech could be used to further a business. If it weren't for technology, I wouldn't have even been able to spin up my business in 1996. So here we are, about 20 years into my business, and I'm really, truly addressing fellow business owners directly for the first time with this weekly webinar series. So if you subscribe on a monthly basis, you get access to all the webinars. And I have already outlined, and this is actually something that I wrote up years ago, top 100 tips for entrepreneurs or small businesses or even startups. I've been sitting on this list because I believe it's valuable. It's based on my experience, and it's really going to act as my guide over at least the next couple of years in this Pirillo.com weekly webinar series. But I also hope to fine-tune what it is that I talk about based on the questions that the subscribers are asking. So this is different in the sense that a lot of the content that I've produced has been put out for everybody and has generally been there for anybody to search for and to listen to, but never has it been specifically for fellow entrepreneurs and business owners. And that's something that kind of excites me because I've inspired a lot of people to start their own businesses based on my actions in putting my business out there on the internet as I've done. That's how I've gained some small degree of notoriety. I'm wanting to do this because it's the natural evolution in my career. It's something that interests me at a substantially deeper level than a lot of the other things that I might cover on a regular basis. Yes, I still produce content. I talk about tech news to patrons who are wanting to subscribe to that. I even share parts of my personal life in a personal vlog, in a video series on my YouTube channel. But I'm talking about addressing maybe a subset of that community, but really people who are more like me, not in the sense that people who might be considered a geek or a nerd, but people who have their own business or who are thinking about starting their own business and looking to leverage experience. That is really what I'm designing the weekly webinar series for, and I'm excited to meet new people and really potentially even connect with people who have known about me for quite some time and might see me in a different light. So I mentioned the top 100 tips. The first one, and I didn't even craft this in any particular order, I just kind of brainstorm these 100 tips or ideas, knowing full well that I could talk about any one of them for a great period of time because I'm a talker. This is one of the reasons why I think doing a weekly webinar series is going to be fun for me because I love talking. I really genuinely do. I can't wait to find more entrepreneurs who want to subscribe to the service so that I can directly interact and not just be a talking head. But the first tip that I have: don't think about building a business. Think of an idea to build a business around. And I couldn't think of a more appropriate first tip because very often I will be approached and people will ask, just general people, I don't know their background, but they will ask, hey, do you think I should do this? With the idea that they're going to be able to make money at whatever it is that they plan on doing. And I always look at those types of questions as positive. It's good that someone has an idea, but it seems to me that in approaching the idea and knowing full well that it could make a business isn't the same as just tackling an idea and then letting the business build around it. So when I started sending out an email newsletter back in 1996, long before a lot of email newsletter services existed, in fact, I don't think any email newsletter service existed. I kind of had to roll my own. I just wanted to share information because I loved discovering new websites and services and experiences and software that unlocked amazing potential. Some of them were fun, some of them were more functional than fun, but it was always the thrill of the hunt of finding new things online. So even back then, I was always more fascinated in software and websites, more so than hardware. And this was almost putting me at odds with a lot of the tech community that might have been interested in tech information. I found stuff that actually meant something, that was actually useful, that could actually transform. And by and large, it did. I acted as a filter because I was looking for the stuff anyway, because I enjoyed exploring and finding new things and sharing those discoveries with other people. But 99% of that was with software. It wasn't with hardware at all. Hardware is not very often been interesting to me. And I find myself more like the average consumer in that sense, or maybe even the average business owner. They know tech exists, they know hardware exists, and they know software exists, but trying to figure out how to make it work specifically for your situation is always kind of more interesting for me, in the sense that I would see a website, I would see a piece of software, and then think, well, why is this relevant? How is this doing something different that I couldn't do before? Is this really a good value? Is this something to dive deeper into? And I've always had that experience and perspective with technology. So it's always made me, kind of straddle that line between talking to someone who loves tech for the sake of tech and someone who admires technology for the experiences that it unlocks, as well as from a business owner's perspective, when I would look at a piece of software or a service, is this going to make my job more efficient? Does this unlock a certain experience that I couldn't have before? And the nature of software is that it's always evolving. So when I started the business back then of sharing information, it wasn't necessarily with the idea that it would grow into something that would last 20 years, but it did. And I didn't know the changes that would happen in the industry. And of course, I've molded and adapted and continue to mold and adapt. I just did it because I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed the idea of sharing that experience with somebody else. And so now, you fast forward this period of time, I have the experience. So I have some degree of gravitas, so that when I speak about a tech trend or a tech topic, it's that all that 20 years of experience that I've had based on the idea of sharing my knowledge with other people can be parlayed into something more. So it wasn't that I thought the business was the amazing part of what it was that I came up with. It was that I could layer a business model on top of the idea that fascinated me. And that, to me, I think is at the core of, I think, any successful venture. Because if you're not interested in that idea, it doesn't matter how much business is on top of that idea. If you don't have that spark for the idea, everything else is irrelevant. It's not something that is going to translate into something that you want to stick with for a month, 2 months, a year, 2 years, or beyond. You've got to stay true to that idea and feed that idea and allow the business to grow around the idea. So it wasn't that I came up with, a business model and figured, well, the idea is to share information, but the only way to share information and to generate revenues is this way. No, I just know that I want to share what it is that I know with others. And that's what I enjoy doing. I've enjoyed doing that from the very beginning. What I've been able to do around it, and this is what has offered me a great degree of flexibility, is build business models. So now let me go ahead and try to explain, again, based on my experience. Back in the day, and this is probably going all the way back to even just a few years ago before this radical shift in the industry happened. And other people in my business, specifically content producing entrepreneurs or business owners, know full well what I'm talking about. Unfortunately, the what's often perceived as the customer's the product with free content. So again, to explain, if you're getting content for free, you are the product. You are not anything apart from that. If you're getting something for free, you're the product. So that is what the industry was supportive of, that kind of model, publishing model, publishing for free, and then generating revenue through advertising or even sponsorships. And the two are completely different, and I can, of course, dive into the differences between those two at some point in the future with you. But if my business was based on the idea of creating free content and then selling advertising on top of it, I would find myself in big trouble today. And I wouldn't have as much flexibility if everything that I did was based on the idea of creating free content and generating revenue through advertising. The model doesn't work anymore. It's imploded. It doesn't exist. And this is something that I know I'm not alone in seeing. It's just because of changes in the industry that have happened over time. And these are market realities. So instead of fighting those market realities, I simply do what I've always done, and that is adapt. My idea was always sharing information. My passion has always been in sharing information. So I don't have to change my idea. My passions haven't changed. That's the great thing, right? 20 years into it, I still love talking. I still love seeing what's new out there. I love finding new services that unleash potential and power that I didn't have before. I still love that. I still enjoy that. I still, find that a thrill. And that has translated into me being able to mold the business, again, around the idea. Without the business being the idea, because anybody can say, well, I want to start a business. That's great. What's the idea? Start with the idea. Is the idea interesting to you? Is it going to survive? And when you have that idea, you will find that there are more than one way. There's more than one way. Might I remind everybody that I am streaming this live. And I'm doing that because, one, it is pretty simple to do. I use the free service that Google provides. It's the Google Hangout kind of experience, just live streaming. Live streaming is no longer something that should cost most people any amount of money unless they're talking about truly branding the video experience, which right now, honestly, I'm not as interested in. I tend to be someone who goes for the simplest solution. That's always me. Just if it's complex, the chances of me approaching it, if it takes longer than maybe a day, I'm not interested. That's the kind of person I am when it comes to doing something or executing on an idea. So that's me. Everybody's different. When I have an opportunity to talk about something, I just want to get it done. And that to me is what attracts me to the solutions that are more simple to kind of push out there. So in using this video service, it's easy, it's straightforward, it's affordable, obviously. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Is it something that I'm going to use indefinitely? No, as a matter of fact, absolutely not. My idea, again, I'm going back using this as an example. And remember, I've got 99 other separate tips. I've got a lot of knowledge built up here, and they will be played out in the course of the next couple of years, and then I'll come up with even other tips to talk about and answer direct questions, as well as telling you about recent discoveries over any given week. I just want to talk. That's the idea. That's it. So why am I now wanting to talk more to entrepreneurs and business owners and not doing it, for free? Well, A, nobody works for free. And B, because I believe there's a value in what it is that I want to talk about, specifically with people who could use that and parlay that into something substantially larger. That's something that I've learned. So, talking. It's so simple. That's the idea. Talking. How can you generate revenue from talking? Okay, so advertising used to work, no longer works. Sponsorship kind of works, but you got to wait for those opportunities to kind of fall into your lap. You could do speaking engagements. That takes a great degree of experience and sometimes knowing the right people and negotiating the right deals. You could write a book. That's a way to do it, although you probably won't write a book to make money outright. You establish expertise. Lucky for me, I wrote all the books I feel like I really want to write. Wrote them years ago, back in the late 90s. This little after I had gotten started, I wrote a book about email publishing, which at that time was pretty much the book about email publishing. There was no other book like it out there. And again, I crafted that based upon my experience. But, that led into me doing interviews and talking to other people about what it was that I was interested in and really talking about the transformative nature of the internet back then. And mind you, we're talking about a time when smartphones didn't exist. And email addresses at that stage were really novel. They weren't given, right? As opposed to today, where you just couldn't imagine life without instant access anywhere, including on an airplane. Back then, you were lucky to find a dial-up connection at a hotel. We're talking ancient times. So, in figuring out how to monetize talking, and that's really the word to use effectively, the business model around sharing information, it was really kind of waiting for a service that I could use to better leverage what it was that I could do or provide as the value of the business. And knowing that my value of the business was in talking, I had to wait for a construct or a service basically to come about that would allow me to bring in subscribers, manage all the payments, manage a community without necessarily having to have me be the manager. I don't want to spend my time, watching, how web servers are operating. That doesn't interest me at all. I'm interested in talking about business and entrepreneurship and my experiences over the past 20 years and answering questions of other entrepreneurs or budding entrepreneurs or business owners trying to figure out tech. So even though I've loved talking, I had to wait to do something like a weekly webinar series because A, the market wasn't necessarily ready, and B, I don't know if I feel that I would have had enough experience to do it 10 years ago. 20 years into something, in doing it day in and day out, I don't know what would qualify you or anybody apart from having hands-on, practical, waist-deep experience in something, and that ultimately being the teaching tool. And that, to me, was the timing was perfect. The market was today. I feel the market was worth trying. So even if, for argument's sake, only, let's say, 2 other people want to hear what it is that I have to share, I'm willing to take that risk, knowing full well that a lot of entrepreneurs out there don't necessarily want to subscribe and basically buy into my expertise, even though I know full well that I'm constantly getting tapped for advice. There's a value to that. So I enjoy talking, but I can't give it away for free. That's not the business model anymore. And this is something that, again, has been very difficult to explain to a lot of people who just recognize content is not worth anything. I'm not talking about creating content. I'm talking about talking. I'm talking about dipping into my experience and translating that effectively for someone who wants it and someone who needs it and someone who sees the value in it. So, I find this to be a very low-risk proposition. I love talking. That's the idea. The business model of the weekly webinars is a subscription model. It's that simple. Nothing has effectively changed. I'm just taking my experience and leveraging it in a different capacity. And that's, to me, again, going back to that idea, that idea of talking has not changed. Your idea may be completely different, radically different. Your idea may be just so incredibly different. Because I can't imagine, there's so many business models out there, so many. It's not a cookie cutter thing. There's so many differences. And that's fascinating to me too, because very often I will be inspired by someone of a completely different discipline and how they do things. I'm always learning. I always love learning. But again, the crux of what I'm trying to present, at least in this first topic, is not enjoying the business for business sake, unless you do. It's enjoying the idea and relishing the idea and knowing full well that over time, how you take that idea and build the business around it is going to change. It gives you so much flexibility, because business models will always be forced to change when the market forces them to change. That's how it goes. It's not black or white. There is no winning or losing necessarily. You can't necessarily compare your idea to somebody else's, because, this is probably a tip on down the line, I've always talked about, and if it does come up again, I'll be happy to dive deeper into it, trust me. But in the same breath, it's not the idea, it's the execution. So speaking to that, you may have the idea, build a business model around it, figure out how it's going to work, how it's going to go, how it's going to flow, and just pursue the idea, and in such a fashion that it is going to work for you. And if it isn't working, change it. Change how you execute upon that idea until it does work. If it does work, and it may not even be practical for it to work, but it may still be a good idea. But good ideas are honestly everywhere. I see so many great ideas. So many amazing ideas, but it's the execution. And that's completely up to you. Completely, utterly up to you. But as long as you are flexible enough to know that that's going to change for and for no reason apart from there are many circumstances that are completely beyond your control. But that's part of the fun, so to speak. But I can only speak from my experience in knowing that my idea was just sharing and knowing full well that I enjoy talking. I am sitting here in a room all on my own, and I've known that I'm not really talking to anybody in the room, but I treat the camera like it's another person. And, I know that I'm probably potentially connecting with somebody. And letting them know that that idea could go somewhere, and there is no one single perfect business model, and that's always going to force you to reevaluate, and that could be every 6 months, every year, every 5 years, depends on what industry you're in, right? There are a lot of variables at play. This is not a cookie cutter experience. But I think as long as your idea is at the central part of what kind of experience you're trying to create, what kind of product you're trying to create, what kind of service you're trying to create, just stick to the idea. What's that idea? And if you exhaust that, and you realize there is no business to be built around the idea, can you pivot that idea? I mean, that's happened before too. But again, I say, if that idea is the thing that gets you up in the morning, I stick to it. Stick to that idea as much as you can. And I think this is really the tenacity of entrepreneurs that is very difficult to explain to someone who's not an entrepreneur. Like, it's very difficult for entrepreneurs to quit, right? It's just not necessarily in our DNA. We just believe in ideas so strongly that even if nobody else believes in that idea, we do. And there's no wrong way to believe in the idea. There are a lot of people who are going to diminish, how you choose to build a business around the idea. Some of them may be right, and many of them are wrong, but ultimately it is your path. I would recommend that you not be quote unquote married to a business model around an idea. I think you need to be married to the idea. You need to believe in it. You just do. because nothing else is going to get you. No one else is going to motivate you to bring that idea to fruition. Nobody. Don't expect anybody to. Don't expect your friends to. Don't expect your family. Anybody. I don't care who they are. You've got to believe in it yourself, and that's again the heart of it is the idea. Don't be married to the business model. That's really that's the thing. Even especially when you're starting out, you may see, well, this is the way so and so does it. That's the way they do it. You got to do it yourself. Don't be married to the business model. Be married to the idea, and you'll figure out the business model. Or maybe there is no business model. But ultimately, I think that believing the idea is going to see it through. I didn't really have a plan apart from firing up the camera, turning on the microphone, or remembering to, and talking for about a half hour. This is what my plan is every week. I've got at least 99 other entrepreneurial business tips, and of course, we'll be answering questions. And really kind of formulating how I do this weekly webinar series based upon the questions that fellow entrepreneurs and business owners ask of me. I'm very happy to talk about technology solutions because this is something that I understand at a deep level, and I do enjoy talking about, especially if it's something that can transform a business in a very simple fashion. It's not just about being overwhelmed with these technology choices. It's about making the choices that are right for your business. I'm a business owner. This is something that has been absolutely rock solid for the past 20 years. I'm a talker. So you're never going to have a silent moment with me in the room. It's not going to happen at all. Sometimes it's difficult to get me to stop talking. So I'm going to try to cut myself off. And that sometimes is very difficult to do, especially when I enjoy connecting with other people. So Pirillo.com is where these weekly webinars are happening. And if you know of an entrepreneur or business owner that may be able to use my advice, feel free to let them know. I believe that in terms of the time that I'm taking and what my time is worth, which is the most valuable thing that I have, I believe it's reasonable to present this service in the way that I'm doing it, and doing something that's kind of new for me. It's an old idea, but a different business model. You know what? I may be an old man in certain respects. By the way, did I mention that I love working out of the comfort of my home? I do. There's the dogs back there. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing. Pirillo.com is where you can send other people. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them on the website after you've signed up, assuming you have. And at this point, I'm going to leave you to your own devices.